Welcome to our channel, all friends. If you are new to my channel, please subscribe my channel and press the bell icon to stay update for new videos. Thanks. Let's start new video. Mukhtar, you scoundrel! Who have you brought back this time? I shrieked when I saw a withered 15-year-old girl with my husband. I knew very well what my husband's deeds were. At my cry, my husband kicked me forcefully, and I fell onto the cot. How many times have I told you, Shabana, keep your mouth shut? This is my wife. I've married her. I looked at the withered flower whose face was completely pale and she was crying with soft sobs. I felt immense pity for her. Mukhtar, the day God gives you a daughter, you'll realize the cruelty you inflict on other people's daughters. Mukhtar took the 15-year-old girl into my room and left her there. As he closed the door, he came towards me like a hawk, grabbing my hair from the back of my head and pulling me to stand in front of him. Bridle your tongue. I haven't done any cruelty. I've shown her sympathy. Her honor was ruined. I gave her honor by marrying her. Do you know how much peace her family has gotten because of me? Otherwise, who would even look at a girl like that? Mukhtar tried to portray himself as a good man, puffing out his chest, and I spat in his face. I know your good character very well, Mukhtar. I know everything about what kind of girls you marry and how you marry them. These illusions you have about giving honor, this world might be impressed with you, but not me. Shabana knows your deeds and your goodness very well. Hearing my words, my husband's anger reached the sky. He pushed me to the ground once again and rained kicks and punches on me. When he couldn't control my tongue, he would try to silence me with his hands and feet. I was lying in a corner, completely bruised by his hands, and he had gone into the room. My heart began to weep tears of blood, partly out of my own helplessness and partly for that girl's fate. I wished I could somehow save that innocent soul. Because of my lack of courage, countless girls had been ruined, and I couldn't do anything. This feeling never let me rest. Sometimes the thought would come to me, what would I do if God gave me a daughter? It was almost 6 years since Mukhtar and I got married. Mukhtar used to work at my father's factory, and my father, in his last moments, had hastily arranged my marriage to Mukhtar because I had no one else. My father trusted Mukhtar greatly, which is why, along with the marriage, he also gave his factory to Mukhtar. I arrived at Mukhtar's small, solitary house after our wedding. In the beginning, Mukhtar took great care of me. He loved me deeply and was attentive to my needs. My father was completely satisfied, believing he had chosen a good life partner for me. Life continued like this, but in the second month of our marriage, my father passed away. Everything came into Mukhtar's hands, and then I saw Mukhtar's true colors. The man who used to hover around my father, hands clasped, who cared about my smallest desires, changed so drastically that it became difficult for me to recognize him. After burying my father, when he returned home, he sat before me like a powerful landlord and said, "Look, Shabana, your father is no longer over your head. You are at my mercy. So beware. If you ever step outside the confines of this house or raise your voice in front of me, I will take your life. From today, you will do whatever I say." I, who hadn't even fully shed tears over my father's death, was astonished by his words. I didn't understand what he meant, but after a few days, I understood his intentions clearly. He had deliberately worn a cloak of goodness in front of my father, and as soon as my father was gone, he reverted to his true self. It was the 5th day after my father's passing when he returned home around midnight. He was flustered, and there was blood on his clothes. Seeing his condition, I also became worried and asked, "Mukhtar, what is this?" He didn't answer, quickly changed his clothes, and even washed them himself. I was puzzled about what was going on because he had never washed his own clothes before. Then, without eating, he silently lay down on the bed. I kept pressing him, "Mukhtar, what happened? Tell me." But he said nothing and closed his eyes to sleep. Tired, I tidied up the food and went to the bathroom where I was completely startled. In the corner of the floor, a small golden earring was glimmering. I picked it up and saw that it was half broken, and it was certainly not mine. Where did this earring come from? Then it occurred to me that Mukhtar had washed his clothes. Perhaps it was in his clothes. I carefully put the earring away. The next morning at breakfast, when I placed the earring in front of Mukhtar and asked about it, the color drained from his face, astonishing me. His face instantly turned pale. He snatched the earring and further bent and twisted it, ruining it. I was shocked as to why he had treated the gold earring like that and whose earring it was. When I brought up the topic again, Mukhtar grabbed my hair in his fist and said, "Shut your mouth. You haven't seen anything and you know nothing. And be warned, if you keep questioning me like the police, then..." This was the first time Mukhtar had raised his hand at me like this and tried to intimidate me. Tears welled up in my eyes. "Mukhtar, what has happened to you after father's death? You used to claim you loved me. Why have you suddenly become so cruel?" Crying, I asked him again, but he slapped me hard across the face and said, "Enough. There's no need for drama in front of me. Get up and leave me alone. Let me have my breakfast." He shoved me off the cot and started eating while I sat lost in thought. Whose gold earring was it that had made Mukhtar's face twist like that? 2 days passed like this, and then on the third day, Mukhtar entered the house with a 15-year-old girl and said, "This is my wife. She was helpless because of her circumstances, so I married her." I looked the girl up and down. She didn't even seem fully mature yet, but from her condition, it was clear something terrible had happened to her. Mukhtar made her sit in my room and moved me to the storeroom. The entire night, Mukhtar stayed in that room with the girl, and my heart writhed in agony. The next morning after he left for the factory, I went to my room to check on her. Seeing her state, I pitied her. I couldn't help but hug her tightly, and she burst into tears. When I asked, she told me that someone had assaulted her. She didn't know who it was, but because of it, her family was facing severe disgrace in the neighborhood. That's why her parents had rushed into marrying her off to Mukhtar. Seeing the tears in her eyes, I felt immense sorrow for her. Who knows what monster had done this to her? Technically, she was my co-wife, but for some reason I felt deep sympathy for her. I stroked her head, forced her to eat breakfast, and said, "Don't worry, I'll take care of you myself." I had absolutely no intention of causing her any kind of pain. She had brought her small number of belongings. I told her to put her things in my wardrobe, and as she started to put them away, I was shocked. The other half of the earring I had found in the bathroom was in her belongings. I took the earring in my hand and asked in surprise, "Dua, whose is this?" Weeping, she said, "This is my earring. When I was abused, it broke and half of it went missing. Mother said it was gold, and to keep it, it would be useful in bad times, so I brought it with me." As soon as I heard Dua's words, the ground slipped from beneath my feet. "What do you mean, Dua? You were wearing this earring when you were abused?" I couldn't believe what I had heard was true. She nodded yes, saying, "Yes, the person who abused me, half of this earring got stuck in his clothes, and it broke." She even showed me her injured ear, which made the whole story sickeningly clear to me, and it felt like the sky had fallen on my head. My husband, who had ruined a girl's honor, was now trying to prove himself a very honorable man by marrying her in the name of sympathy. I didn't say anything to that innocent girl, but when Mukhtar returned home in the evening, I grabbed him by the collar and, in hushed tones, told him that I knew his truth. I knew that he had ruined Dua's honor and had now brought her back by marrying her. As soon as he heard me, Mukhtar slapped my face hard and began to strangle me. My breath hitched and he let me go, saying, "Beware if you ever utter those words again. If I hear anything like that from your mouth again, I will throw you out of this house and tell everyone that you are a woman of bad character. You have neither the shelter of your parents nor anyone else. Think, if I throw you out of the house, where will you go? Your father wrote all his property in my name, so you have nothing." Mukhtar's threats truly scared me to death because I was a homebound girl who had never stepped outside the house her entire life. My father used to bring me everything I needed at home, and I spent all my time in housework. I had no understanding of the outside world, which is why I was completely at Mukhtar's mercy. Mukhtar kept the girl in marriage for a week, and then, declaring her of bad character, he divorced her and threw her out of the house. Mukhtar had grown tired of her. He had fully exploited her for a week and was now looking for a new girl. When I realized Mukhtar's true intentions, I folded my hands and pleaded, "Beware, Mukhtar, don't you dare do this again. Stop ruining the honor of other people's daughters." But when had Mukhtar ever been affected by anyone's words? He had done this many times even before our marriage. I just hadn't known. My father, in his simplicity, had been deceived and handed me over to a wretched man like Mukhtar. A few days passed, and Mukhtar played the same cruel game with another girl, first violating her dignity, then spreading rumors about her in her neighborhood, and finally, under the pretense of righteousness, marrying her and bringing her home. By now, I didn't need any proof to understand how my husband conducted these marriages. I would just sit silently in a corner, weeping, watching him indulge in his lust with these young girls for a week before divorcing them. And now he had brought home yet another innocent 15-year-old girl. My heart ached seeing her. The purity in her face drew me to her completely. When Mukhtar brought her into my room, I folded my hands before him and begged, "Stop this, for God's sake. Have some mercy. She's just an innocent child. Have you no shame? What if God blesses us with a daughter? What would you do then?" Hearing this, Mukhtar started beating me and shouted, "You always ruin everything. Every time I try to enjoy myself, you cry and spoil my happiness. This girl is an orphan. She has no one, just like you were. I'm giving her a better life. She has a home now. She can stay here peacefully for a week. What's your problem?" I looked at him with disgust and said, "First, you robbed this orphan girl of her honor, and now you pretend to be her savior by marrying her? Do you really think you've done some noble deed? Fear God, Mukhtar. Fear him. The day is not far when you will be held accountable before him." Upon hearing me, Mukhtar flew into such a rage that he picked up a stick lying nearby and started beating me. He hit me so much that I fell to the ground, utterly exhausted. Blood started oozing from my hands and feet. My lip was split, and my voice was choked in my throat. Mukhtar then went into the room. I lay there sobbing the whole time, remembering my late father, who had somehow been deceived by this despicable man. By now, my husband had done this same thing with approximately 6 girls. At least, after my marriage, he had married 6 girls. I had no idea what he had been doing before that, because Mukhtar's family were villagers, and he lived alone in the city, so he was free to do as he pleased. And now he had the factory and money. What could he possibly lack? People, too, in an effort to save their daughter's honor, would marry them off to Mukhtar without proper investigation. I was furious at those people, too. Lying on the ground, I began to pray, "Oh Allah, somehow save the honor of innocent girls from my husband." I feared God. I was terrified of the time when Allah's wrath would descend and Mukhtar wouldn't be able to answer. And perhaps I too would have to answer why I didn't save those girls. Why I silently remained within the 4 walls of the house, even knowing what my husband was doing outside. Slowly the night passed, and when morning came and the room door opened, I looked at it with tear-filled eyes. But surprisingly, it wasn't Mukhtar who came out. It was the girl he had brought back as his wife last night. I quickly wiped my tears and looked at her. Taking small steps, she came to me, took my hand, helped me get up, assisted me in sitting on the cot, and then went herself to bring water, handing me a glass. I was looking at her in astonishment. Until today, my husband would always come out of the room, and when I would go in, a crying, innocent girl would be sitting in front of me, with whom my husband had spent the night abusing in the name of his right. But this girl was perfectly fine. There was no sign that my husband had taken his right from her. When the girl saw the surprise in my eyes, she smiled and said, "I'm fine, are you okay?" I quickly nodded yes and asked, "Where is Mukhtar?" She pointed towards the room. I thought perhaps Mukhtar was sleeping, so I didn't say anything more, and she herself began to speak. "I am an orphaned girl. I had no one. I used to sit on the street, sometimes begging, sometimes someone would simply give me something to eat. My parents passed away long ago in an accident. My relatives took all my property and left me to lick the dust of the streets. I spent 3 years of my life on the streets like that. Many times I became the victim of hungry wolves' lust, and then just sat there on the street because there was no other choice. But a week ago, your husband stopped by me on the street, and he gave me a plate of biryani to eat. He showed me sympathy for a while and then left. After he left, I ate the biryani and continued sitting there on the street. But at noon, I don't know what happened. I suddenly fainted, and when I regained consciousness, I was lying behind bushes. My honor had been stolen, my hands and feet were wounded, my clothes were lying near those bushes. I managed to put on my clothes with great difficulty, and stumbling, reached the road again in that state. I cried over my helplessness for the rest of the day, and when the next morning came, your husband came to me again. He had food in his hand, and he was asking about my well-being with extreme sympathy. Weeping, I told your husband everything because I had no support, no sympathizer. Perhaps that's why, when Mukhtar showed me sympathy, I expressed the grief of my heart. Mukhtar consoled me and said he would help me. And then 2 or 3 days later, Mukhtar asked me to marry him. I thought perhaps he was my sympathizer, that he wanted to give me a good life, so I agreed to marry Mukhtar. He married me and brought me here, and last night when he left me in the room and came to you, I also started to come out of the room. But as soon as I reached the door, I heard everything you said to Mukhtar. I realized that the one who ruined me was no one else but Mukhtar, who ruined me by wearing a cloak of goodness and sympathy. I had already seen much sorrow in my life. My relatives had treated me badly, my parents had left this world, and now the person I trusted and married also turned out to be a wolf who would ruin me. And fire of anger and revenge ignited within me. And when Mukhtar came into the room, I decided that this time I would not forgive any oppressor. And that's why I took revenge on Mukhtar for his cruelty. Hearing me, the girl looked at me with moist eyes, and her last words startled me. What do you mean you took revenge on Mukhtar? What have you done? A faint smile appeared on her face at my question, but she didn't answer. I quickly got up and rushed into the room, and the sight of Mukhtar made me sick. That 15-year-old girl had inflicted far greater cruelty than I could have imagined. Mukhtar lay naked on the cot, his private parts severed. But before this was done, he must have been unconscious, because I hadn't heard any scream from him, nor had he regained consciousness yet. I turned back to look at the girl, and she smiled, saying, "Now your husband won't ruin any more girls' lives. The same sleeping and intoxicating medicine he used to give girls to render them unconscious and exploit them, I gave it to him. He won't regain consciousness before morning, and when he does, he'll realize that his tyranny has come to an end." The girl gathered her belongings and said, "My work here is done now. Your husband has stolen my honor, and now he is useless, so I am leaving from here." I took her hand and said, "Where will you go?" She replied, "I'll go back and sit on that same street." I looked at her from head to toe and said, "Shamila, you don't need to go anywhere. Like me, you are also Mukhtar's wife. You are also an orphan and helpless, just like me. If you go back to sit on the street, another wolf like Mukhtar will attack you. You can stay here in this house with me. Now Mukhtar isn't even capable of ruining any other girl's life. Now we both can make Mukhtar's life a living hell." I smiled at Shamila, and a wave of happiness spread across her face. She quickly embraced me and said, "If I can just get a roof over my head, I don't need anything more than that." I embraced Shamila and continued talking to her. She was a very good and sweet girl who had suffered a lot from her circumstances. She told me everything about herself, and I told her about mine. The next morning, when Mukhtar regained consciousness, his screams shook the entire house. He rushed to attack both of us, but we both fought him off and chased him out of the house. Then Shamila gave me courage, and we went to the police station and filed a case against Mukhtar. We also located the girls whose lives Mukhtar had ruined and compelled them to record their statements. In this way, when a few more girls bravely stepped forward, Mukhtar ended up behind bars. Shamila and I divorced Mukhtar, and with the help of the police, I also took back my father's factory from him. Today, Shamila and I live in the same house. I manage my father's factory, and Shamila helps me a lot. We two orphaned girls have joined forces and made our lives better. But it was Shamila's hand that gave me so much courage. She didn't tolerate the injustice done to her. Instead, she took revenge for that cruelty. If she hadn't done that, who knows how many more girls would have been ruined by my husband today. I would tell all girls, instead of being afraid, face difficulties with courage. Instead of enduring injustice, raise your voice against it, and one day life will indeed become easier, just as my life and Shamila's lives have become easier.